A stranger moved a frame photo in my house while my kids slept. A car idled outside my driveway for hours. A trail camera captured footsteps that shouldn't exist. These are 3 real people who woke up to being watched, hunted, and followed. They barely made it out. Tonight you'll check your locks, look in the back seat, and keep your phone within reach. The first person lives in Ohio. This is what happened to him. The framed photo was on the mantel where I'd left it the night before. I noticed it because I always straighten it at bedtime. This time it leaned right, like someone had nudged it with a finger. A cold pit formed in my gut the second I saw it. My pulse hammered in my ears as I crouched to pick it up and found the back of the frame had a faint smear of dirt. My wife, Amy, and the twins were asleep upstairs. I told myself a cleaning crew, a visiting neighbor, something mundane. I didn't go upstairs to wake her. I put the photo back and told myself to call in the morning. I'm 38. I work as an IT support specialist for a local non-profit in Columbus. We have twin boys who are 5 and an older golden retriever who sleeps in our bedroom. We own a 2019 Honda Accord, and we've had a Ring doorbell for 2 years. Small routines keep our household moving. Park in the same spot. Amy leaves a specific coffee cup on the counter, dark ceramic, no logo, and I lock the back door twice. That framed photo is of our first summer as a family. It shouldn't have moved. At first I blamed Amy's brother, who's a contractor and drops by sometimes. "Did Mike swing through?" I texted her. No reply. I told myself maybe I did it in a rush. Logic abandoned me. I checked the back, and the deadbolt felt warm. The doorknob was slightly greasy under my fingers. Someone had touched it recently. Cold sweat broke across my back. I called Amy, left a half-joking voicemail. She called right back from her office. She was on a meeting, and I swallowed words I wish I hadn't. I didn't want to worry anyone. I kept quiet for 3 days. On day 2, I found another thing wrong. Shoes by the back door that didn't belong to any of us. Big, muddy, tread-worn, in a way that told me they were meant for a work boot, but they were civilian. I ran a mental list of everyone who had access to our house. The cleaning service had been here Friday. I texted the account manager, "Everything okay after last week?" Answer, "Yes, no one else was in your house." My mind went blank. I started doing mundane checks that turned into rituals. I would walk the house at 2 a.m., flip lights on and off, test every window. Once, I put my phone, an iPhone 13, on the kitchen counter and used the Ring app to review the last 48 hours. There were overnight uploads, grainy night images, but nothing that exceeded a shadow. Then I scrolled to a clip from 2 nights earlier, a figure at the edge of the camera's range, just past the porch light, lingering by the side gate. The timestamp said 2:34 a.m. I was home, or so I thought. I rationalized. Maybe a delivery, maybe a neighbor. I called off work one morning because I couldn't focus. I should have called the police then. I didn't. Part of me wondered if I was losing it. My wife joked later that I was being paranoid. I almost believed it. On the 4th morning, a printed sticky note was tucked behind the same photo. It had my name, written in block letters, and a time, Tuesday, 2:30. I opened my laptop, and my stomach clenched when I found that I had a calendar entry with that exact time, an old reminder I'd set months ago and forgotten. The second line on the sticky made everything stop. "You hear them?" The world seemed to tilt. I checked the garage. A pair of muddy boot prints led from the side gate to the crawlspace door and stopped at the lattice where we'd stored old Christmas lights. Whoever had been there knew our house. They'd been inside. I found a scrap of paper wedged under the laundry basket with a list of dates. I couldn't read all of them without a magnifying glass, but the top line was today's date. I stayed because I told myself waiting would prove this was nothing. That was my mistake. The next thing I knew, I was standing in the driveway with the twins strapped in their car seats, wondering if leaving the house would be safer than staying. I tried the Ring feed again, and froze on a clip where someone reached up and smudged the corner of the framed photo, as if to test whether it had been noticed. They touched our life. I called the non-emergency line at 10:12 a.m. and the operator sounded calm in a way meant to unfray you. A patrol came 30 minutes later. The officer who took our statement asked me the questions every officer asks in scenes like this. When did you first notice? Who has access? Any threats? I answered. My legs turned to water as I described the sticky note. The officer said they would file a report and run the prints. He left me a card with a case number. I tucked it into my wallet and went numb. They checked the ring footage again with their tablet. The officer's expression changed from bored to focused. He pulled up video I'd never seen, an angle from a neighbor's security camera across the street. It was clearer. A man in dark clothes walked along our sidewalk 3 nights in a row. Each time he paused at the same place by our hedge, then moved away. He ducked his head like someone who didn't want to be recognized. The timestamp showed it had been happening for months. A cold pit formed in my gut when the officer said, "This pattern goes back 700 days. He said it like a fact you don't argue with. They found more. At the back of our crawl space, tucked inside a plastic toolbox, was a small spiral notebook with entries. It had dates, times, and short notes. Framed photo moved. 2 kids asleep upstairs. Garage door closed at 11:05 p.m. There were 23 separate entries directly referencing our street. It was a log. The officer photographed it, zip-tied it into an evidence bag, and told me the lab would try to lift prints. He asked if I wanted to press charges if they caught someone. My mouth wouldn't form the words. They canvassed neighbors. Someone remembered a man in a grey hoodie asking about the house 2 blocks over. A utility worker reported seeing someone crouched by our hedges at dawn. The detective assigned the case asked for access to our phones and security accounts. My employer's HR even offered a support line. I should have been angry. Instead, I felt exposed, like someone had come into my mind and read the margins. 2 weeks later, during a traffic stop 10 miles away from our house, a patrolman recognized the man from a neighborhood flyer and found items in his trunk. A set of copies of our house key, 3 in total, some printed photos of our front yard, and a small shoebox filled with sticky notes with dates and shorthand. They arrested him. At the station, they counted the items. There were 204 sticky notes in total, each referencing properties on our block, 8 of which were houses with children. The detective said it was obsessive. The prosecutor charged him with home invasion and stalking. At the trial, the notebooks and the ring footage were the smoking gun. In court, they introduced the notebook entries, the neighbor's camera footage, and the copies of our key. He was sentenced to 9 years with a minimum of 6 before eligibility for parole. The judge called his behavior predatory and calculated. I sat in the gallery with Amy and the boys and felt, for a moment, some return of control. But control is an illusion I learned to live around. I still check the back seat of the Accord before I get in. I still move the framed photo every night and check the back of the frame. Every single night. Several states away, a freelance photographer was on a trip that devolved into a nightmare. I woke to someone breathing close to my face. It was a single sentence that hit me before I could open my eyes. My legs turned to water, and for a second I couldn't move. My breath came in gasps as I fumbled for my phone. The 2018 Subaru Outback's interior light was off, but the camp lantern glowed faintly by the tent flap. I remember the smell of damp earth and a faint note of gasoline, like someone had arrived with a car and left it running for a while. I could hear rustling outside, something brushing a tarp. The world slowed down as I pushed the tent zipper and peered into black. 12 hours earlier, everything seemed normal. I had been on a weekend run, dirt road, one-night camp, a few frames for a travel magazine pitch. My phone was a Pixel 6. I posted a photo of the river bend at noon on Instagram and stupidly geotagged it. 48 likes and 1 comment. Nice shot. Where is this? I responded with the county name only. I set up my tent at a spot I thought was private, put my camera gear in the locked trunk, and sat by a small fire until midnight. I remember heating instant coffee, black, and laying out my sleeping bag. I told myself this was the point of being a freelance photographer, going where other people don't. At first, I thought the breathing belonged to a raccoon. That went away when I saw a boot print 30 feet from my tent, the toe pointing toward me. It was large, not mine, wider and with a different tread pattern, and fresh. Bile rose in my throat when I realized the print had a small smear of mud that matched the mud on my tent flap. Air caught in my chest. Whoever had been here had come close enough to touch my stuff. I crept to the car and found the trunk slightly ajar. My camera bag was still inside, but one lens was gone. The zipper was cut clean. I called the ranger station, and the operator said they'd send someone, but dispatch could be slow on a Friday night. I tried to reason it away. Maybe I miszipped. Maybe I left the lens in the tent. My mind offered explanations because it had to. I should have packed up and gone to the nearest town. There was another sign. A trail marker down the path had a small scratch, 3 short lines carved into the wood. I'd seen that symbol before online, some forum post about hunters marking paths, but I shrugged it off. I told myself people do odd things out here. The smell of cigarettes lingered near the riverbank, and I don't smoke. I took a photo to send to my editor. Weird stains might be a problem spot. Back in the present, the breathing stopped when I started moving. I zipped the tent and slipped into the Subaru, my fingers shaking so badly that I couldn't find the keys at first. I had a tile tracker on the camera bag, and on the phone I watched the tile last ping from 2 hours earlier, about 400 yards down a service road. I followed the tracker until it cut out near an abandoned ranger cabin. My vision narrowed to the beam of a flashlight. I found footprints leading into the cabin. Inside, somebody had been rifling through an old desk and left a matchbook from a bar in the next county. The matchbook had a scrawl of a name I didn't recognize and a number, 1107. I don't know why that stuck with me, maybe because it told me someone tracked dates. My brain screamed warnings. I tried calling 911, but the connection broke. In the silence, I felt the presence of someone who had watched me set up camp, of someone who had measured my quiet. I spent the rest of the night crouched in the Subaru, engine running, camera bag in my lap. I called a friend at dawn and he drove out with me. We found the tent's zipper shredded, a cigarette butt not mine, and my missing 70-200mm lens left in the underbrush with a strap cut clean. The ranger took photos and filed a report. They set traps and did patrols, but the person who came through that campsite was never found. The evidence was small and scattered, footprints, a cigarette butt, a scratched marker, but together they were bigger than either of us wanted to admit. The strangest part was the camera's memory card. When I put it back into my laptop, there were images I didn't take. Blurry shots of our campsite from different angles, some at 2 in the morning, 3 photos with a timestamp of 2:17 a.m. In one, there was a boot in frame. Escape was stupid and slow and designed by panic. I drove the Outback with the heat on full and my hands numb around the wheel. I remember glancing in the rear view and thinking I saw headlights far behind me, but the ranger later told me it was most likely a tow truck. I called 911 again, and this time the operator stayed on the line. My voice broke. I'm at the old ranger cabin off Highway 221. I think someone was camping here. I couldn't form the rest of it at first. They're watching me. My tent's been cut. The operator asked where I was, and I spat out coordinates I had in a memo because I always save them. My sentences came out as fragments. Camera stolen, lens missing, found prints, cigarette, cabin, 2:17 a.m. Ooh, the operator repeated back calm and precise and told me to keep driving toward town. A county cruiser met us on Route 128 about 20 minutes later. The officer asked for an account while his partner walked the perimeter. I described the scratches on the trail marker and the footprints. They dusted the cigarette butt for DNA and bagged the lens strap. They told me there had been similar reports in pockets along the county border for the last 2 summers. Campers who woke up missing gear or found evidence of someone having been in their tent. The ranger said the local pattern showed the perpetrator targeted solo campers and travel photographers because we set up in predictable spots. They couldn't promise he'd be caught. They did find one thing of use: a trail camera someone had set up further down the river to monitor beaver activity. It had recorded movement at 2:12 a.m. on the night I was there. The footage showed a hooded figure moving from one campsite to another, pausing directly in front of a tent and bending. The image was grainy, but an outline of a hand and the motion of a zip being cut were clear. They enhanced the frames and sent them to the regional lab. I watched the frames on a laptop in the station and felt a nausea wash over me. Weeks passed. The lab could not lift a usable print from the cigarette butt. The trail camera footage wasn't enough for a charge. I heard later that they had compared the gate to other cases but found no match. The case went cold. I kept the memory card, though. I couldn't throw it away. I replayed the footage in the dark and convinced myself that I had been fortunate to escape with the lens missing instead of something worse. I never go camping anymore. 3 people track my location 24/7. I sell my travel shots, but I've started avoiding remote assignments. The riverbend photo still gets likes. I still can't see it without noticing the shadow in the corner. In Portland, a data analyst discovered the person who made sense of his spreadsheets had been making one about him. There was a key fob on my desk the Monday after we hired Marcus. It wasn't mine. I noticed it because I'd left my lunchbox in the break room and the key fob was sitting where I'd left my mug. I assumed I'd absent-mindedly set mine down, but when I slid my hand toward it, the fob wasn't warm like I'd expect from a pocket. My vision narrowed and I picked it up. The little plastic tag had a thumbprint of dust along one edge. I asked the office manager if she'd seen a spare. She said no. Marcus sat 2 desks over and smiled like someone who knows something you don't. I'm 31, and I work as a data analyst at a mid-sized marketing firm in Portland. I take the 7:25 bus. I always get a medium black coffee from the corner shop, no sugar, and I park in the garage on level B2 beside a column we joke about. Marcus was hired as an account strategist. Charming, quick to volunteer to help with onboarding, always the first one to bring in cookies. Everyone liked him, so I explained away every red flag. At first, the signs were small. My pen would be slightly to the left when I'd left it on the table. My desk plant would be re-watered, though I'd done it the previous night. Then I noticed he knew details about my weekend that I'd only told one co-worker. I'd leave my lunch tucked in my bag and come back to find the container moved to a shelf facing away from the window. I told myself it was a joke, an over-friendly personality. I texted a friend, "This new guy is intense." He laughed. My brain screamed warnings, but I kept quiet. Marcus began to volunteer to help with shadow tasks that involved access, moving boxes in the supply closet, organizing the storage cabinets, even helping with some of our field devices. One week he found a stuffed shoebox of spare key fobs behind a filing cabinet when we had a lockout. "Probably left over from the old security setup," he said, handing me one and winking. I took it and didn't think. Later that night, I checked the shoebox in my apartment closet and found a tiny folded note with a number I didn't recognize and a list of dates. The discovery made no sense. The shoebox was mine, but the key fob sat beneath my socks like evidence. Weeks of small violations turned into a pattern. My coffee order would arrive at my desk with a note. "Thought you might need this before the meeting." My calendar would have entries I didn't add for lunch meetings. He'd mention my commute as though he followed it. "I pass your stop on the 7:25. I would laugh at these things in the moment and later go home unsettled. I couldn't move from thinking about the fob in my shoebox. Who copies a key fob and puts it in your apartment? Everyone liked him, I told myself. He wouldn't. That sentence trailed off more and more. I started tracking small irregularities in a spreadsheet. It's what I do. Dates, items, location, who was nearby. It started as a joke to make myself feel better. The entries grew. A pattern emerged. Every time an item disappeared or was moved, Marcus had been the most proximate person. When my car, a 2020 Ford Escape, was adjusted in the driver's seat one morning, I logged it. When my phone misplaced in the office but turned up on his desk, I logged it. The pattern wasn't clear until I linked days and times and noticed the numbers stacked. 63 small violations over 11 weeks. The cold radiated from my core when I realized it wasn't random. I confronted myself with the data late one night. My spreadsheet had columns Marcus would never understand: closest camera, timestamp diff, badge swipes. It felt absurd to take my own life apart like this, but the evidence was starting to have a logic of its own. I set a wise cam near my desk under the monitor the next morning, more to prove I wasn't paranoid than because I believed I'd catch anything. I kept a small notebook in the bottom drawer and wrote down what I saw. My research assistant instincts wanted to be methodical. My hands shook. The shoebox in my closet became the center of everything. One Saturday, after everyone had left the office, I lifted the carpet tile behind Marcus's desk while pretending to look for an Ethernet cable. I slid a small black shoebox out. Inside were copies of key fobs. My office fob, the spare to the Escape I'd left at work, two labeled apartment. There were printed photographs folded into the lid. Shots of my apartment entry from an angle that could only have been taken when someone stood in the stairwell above my door. The air smelled faintly of Marcus's cologne. I couldn't move. I took photos with my iPhone 11 and exported them to a thumb drive. I counted items like an inventory: 13 key fob copies, 5 Polaroid-style prints, and a folded list with 334 entries. Dates, places, shorthand notes next to each. The list spanned 11 months. The numbers were precise and clinical. I remember thinking of how slow all of it was. Months of small invasions that never escalated until they did. My brain screamed warnings that I had been too slow to follow. I confronted Marcus in the conference room the next week. "We need to talk," I said. He smiled. "About what?" I held up the key. "About why you copied my apartment key." His eyes shifted, not confusion, calculation. He said, "You don't have any proof." He wasn't angry, he was amused. I told him I'd taken photos, that I'd saved timestamps. I said I'd gone to HR. His face didn't change except for a flicker of something like pleasure. The HR manager escorted us both to her office and asked to see what I had. I handed over the thumb drive. HR took the evidence seriously. They called security, and building security searched Marcus's desk and the small storage locker he'd been given. Inside, they found more items: a stack of printed bus schedules with times circled, a list of staff birthdays, and some used public transport tickets that matched days I had been late. They also found a notebook with shorthand that matched the one I'd found in the shoebox. Security took everything. Marcus was suspended pending investigation. He reacted the way people do when cornered. He called his mother. He cried. He said he was stressed. He denied wrongdoing. The company urged a civil restraining order, and they refused to pursue criminal charges because they said it might be difficult to prove intent beyond a reasonable doubt. Marcus hired a lawyer who argued that copying fobs and holding extra keys was an overzealous attachment to office organization. In the interim, he agreed to move his desk and to limit building access. He left town about a month later after HR said his behavior was incompatible with our culture. He called it leaving for a fresh start. I kept the shoebox and the prints. I kept the spreadsheet with its 334 entries and the thumb drive tucked in a fireproof box under my bed. I filed for a civil injunction and got a temporary restraining order. Marcus's name appeared in a police database months later, tied to other complaints, but no arrests were made. He had faked normal for so long that when he left it felt like a relief laced with doubt. I still have the key fob. It's in a thick envelope in a shoebox under my bed. It reminds me to trust my instincts. If you like these, subscribe and hit the bell. More survivor stories coming. Share, like, and keep your loved ones safe tonight.